All the flight school airplanes are out here beating up the pattern. It's a beautifully calm, cool night for it. What a year, man. 2019. A lot's happened throughout this year. Effectively, the year started out with the Coast to Coast series. I know that was in December of 2018, but realistically, that trip was the most epic to date, and it kind of kicked off the mood for the entire year. Arnaldo's been watching the videos for so long, and he approached me at Oshkosh 2018 and said, well, I want to go fly over the Grand Canyon in my airplane, but I've never flown over mountains before, and it'd be nice to have an instructor. And I said, well, if you're looking for somebody to fill your right seat, I'm your guy. And he was like, if you're serious, you got it. We ended up flying that Skyhawk from Cocoa Beach, Florida out to Santa Monica, California and back. And even though that's horribly impractical for two guys in a 172 and we had that thing loaded down and we were exhausted by the end of the trip, we got ramp checked by the Department of Homeland Security because I'm sure a loaded down Skyhawk with two guys going to California and back kind of looked weird. Despite all that stuff, that trip was the perfect way to begin what was going to become an epic year of flying. Right after we finished that Coast to Coast series, about a month after, Arnaldo sold 9337 Hotel and he bought his new airplane, a Turbo Mooney M20K up in Dover, Delaware. That trip was so spontaneous. There really wasn't much planning that went into that. The airplane passed pre-buy and he was happy with it. He closed the deal and we caught an airline up to Delaware. Not long after that, my dad and I got all the engine gauges ripped out of 80991 and we put a big, beautiful engine monitor over there on the right side of the panel. And that was yet another big step in transitioning this airplane from all the legacy stuff it's got in it from the 1970s to true modern technology. Right after that, in late March, we flew the 172 out to Florida for sun and fun. And we had one of the most amazing times with friends and airplanes that I think I had had to date. It was just a really awesome day of flying, and I thought that was going to be the peak of 2019, but I couldn't even comprehend what was coming next. Spending 2.5 weeks in the great state of Alaska was way more impactful than I ever imagined it could be, and I barely scratched the surface. And some of the greatest adventures up there didn't even involve an airplane in any way. From flying in the midnight sun, hitchhiking, finding remote food, taking my first seaplane lesson, losing the words to describe what I'm seeing, all the way to camping on a boat and kayaking in one of the most beautiful places in the world. Going home from that trip sucked. I got home from my 3 weeks in Alaska late June, and at that point it was ready to start packing and thinking about going to Oshkosh. The unfortunate part about Oshkosh this year is we couldn't take 80991. My dad and I found this airplane for sale out here in Texas in 2013, and we bought it in the winter of 2013. The engine already kind of had high time on it, and we knew that at some point this engine is going to need to go through a major overhaul. We were starting to see low oil pressure, high oil temp. There were just some things that weren't really adding up anymore, and ultimately we decided it was time to pull the engine off and get it rebuilt. So we got the engine removed right before Oshkosh, and that pretty much made up our minds for us. We were gonna drive to Oshkosh. We love camping. We loaded up my SUV with all of our gear, and we drove 22.5 hours up to Oshkosh, set up our camp. The weather was garbage when we got there. We actually needed to use the four-wheel drive to get into the campgrounds. But I'll tell you what, taking a 2,000-mile road trip with your dad to go to the biggest aviation expo in the world, I don't care if everything under the sun goes wrong, you can't beat that. At that point, a lot of people were asking left and right, where's 80991? How come you haven't been flying that airplane? The overhaul was started right before Oshkosh, and it wasn't finished until late October. In late September, I unexpectedly started and finished my tailwheel training, thanks to my buddy Keith Yules over in Lockhart, Texas. We were just gonna go fly around in his Super Cub one day, and he asked me, do you have your tailwheel endorsement? And I said, no, I haven't done it yet. And he said, well, crap, man, get in the front seat. And we actually ended up tackling my tailwheel training over the course of 2 weekends. And that was actually a really pivotal moment in this year for me, because it was an awesome and epic slap in the face that showed me just how much I don't know about flying. Earning my tailwheel endorsement was one of the most humbling experiences of 2019 and of my whole flying career at that. And it was really, really awesome to put myself back in the shoes of a student that is just like seemingly hopelessly trying to learn how to do wheel landings in a Super Cub and completely reteach my feet how to use rudder and overall just relearn how to land an airplane. And that was a really awesome experience, to just be slapped across the face with, you don't know how to land this thing. Right after I finished my tailwheel training, Miles and I set out westbound in his Cherokee 180 to attend a weekend course on flying in the canyons of the Southwest. We met up with Jason from the Finer Points and just got to meet and fly with and talk with some of the most amazing people, both pilots that were there for the course or CFIs that were helping teach the course. And it was really awesome to see just what you can learn from just talking to pilots of all sorts of different backgrounds and experience levels. That trip turned into the American High West series when Miles and I decided to continue going north further into Utah and up into Idaho. And there was a lot more that we wanted to do on that trip as far as flying goes and places we wanted to visit, but we had to cut that trip short for a number of reasons. Between the weather just not cooperating and the airplane's limitations kind of making us think twice about some of the places we wanted to go into, especially that time of year. We were intending to go all the way up into Montana and then cut over through Wyoming. We were going to hit Glacier National Park, Yellowstone National Park, but despite having to cut that entire trip short, it was the people that we met up with along the way that just made it so special. And we met up with some people who have truly become lifelong friends. Miles and I got back from that trip right around late October, and right about that time, November 80991 was finally returned to service with a newly overhauled engine on it. We had to go back and forth with our AMP for a few weeks to just work out some kinks and adjust some things on the engine after the overhaul. And then in early December, I broke in the new engine with a solo cross-country trip out to Florida to see one of my best friends get married. The downwind for runway 35 is just right above my head here. There you go, pull the power back. That trip served as a really good icebreaker for me to kind of get me back into solo flying in IMC. And also it reconnected me with how much I love taking cross countries. There was nobody else there, it was all me. Logistics, lodging, rental cars, fuel stops, everything had to be planned and coordinated by me. And it was really cool to just kind of step back into that. And I think ending the year with a trip like that is a really good segue into what's coming in 2020. A lot of the things that happened in 2019 have brought me very close to some people that are now incredibly important in my life. Arnaldo and I take that crazy trip out to California and back. Then we go pick up his new airplane and battle ice and all that kind of stuff, getting it out of Delaware. I fly out to Sun and Fun and camp in the humidity for 9 days and then fly tight formation with Chris and Cameron down the coast in front of Miami down to Key West with some of my closest friends. And then after that, I go spend 3 weeks in Alaska with Chris. And that was just some of the most amazing flying and adventures that I've had to date. But knowing the way things go, that's gonna get topped again and again and again. I spontaneously knock out my tailwheel training with Keith. Miles and I take a long trip out west in his Cherokee just because. And then I get to top off the year by flying my favorite airplane back out to Florida to be there for Cameron's wedding. And along the way, meet even more people that I know are going to become lifelong friends. A decade ends and another begins. In 2019, I learned an incredible amount as a pilot and a filmmaker, but I also learned more about myself than I ever thought I could. And that's what matters. Over the last year, if you've improved your income, improved your ratings, your flight hours, your followers, that's all great, but improving yourself is something that will improve every aspect of your life. And if you improve yourself, your attitude is going to improve the lives of everyone around you. 2020 marks the 10th year for Aviation 101, and the changes that have been made to the production quality of the videos, my flying skills, and the changes that have been made to myself shock me every single day. And it makes me so ecstatic to see what's gonna happen in the next 10 years of my life. And just about all of those changes that have been made are thanks to you, my audience. Every single one of you molded my flying skills, molded my filmmaking in some way, shape, or form. And continuing to make these videos to attempt to inspire the next generation of aviators is the absolute least I can do to show my gratitude. I recently heard on a podcast that hell is to meet the person you could have been at death and realize you're not even a shadow of that person. I don't know about you, but I don't want to let that happen. So a happy new year to all the people right here, all of you who constantly inspire me to continue improving myself and to continue improving the content that inspires you. Thank you so much for the inspiration and the support over the last 10 years. A lot's changed. So cheers to a new year and cheers to a new decade. Once today's gone, you're never getting it back. So make it count. We'll see you in 2020.